So welcome to our distinguished lecture of today, the first one of 2024. It's my pleasure to introduce Virginia Dignum. She will talk about Beyond the AI Hype, Balancing Innovation and Social Responsibility. Virginia is a professor of responsible artificial intelligence at Umeå University in Sweden, where she leads the AI Policy Lab. She is in many important committees like the United Nations Advisory Body, the OECD Expert Group, and UNESCO Expert Group, among others. And soon a book called The AI Paradox will be published, so we're looking forward to your book. And I already have your previous book on responsible AI. So thank you for being here, Virginia. And remember, you can do questions in the Q&A, please, anytime, and we will try to answer that. So just before to start, just remembering that this is an initiative of the Institute for Experiential AI, which is the AI phase of everything we are doing at Northeastern University. And the idea is to develop human-centric AI solutions that leverage machine technology to extend human intelligence and also to take care of our planet. So Virginia, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for your introduction and for inviting me to speak here today. It's my pleasure to present for this group. And indeed, like Ricardo says, please think about any questions that you would like to have at the end of my presentation. It would be great to have an interaction with all of you. So let's start with not further ado. Ricardo already introduced the title, and of course the AI hype and all the developments about AI is something which has not escaped attention of anyone. So we see every day, every moment news about AI, the great developments, the great opportunities that AI is bringing forward in many different fields and in many different directions. At the same time, the hype seems to keep high. I just before we start this presentation, I looked a bit again around in main news outlets in the world about what are they talking about AI at the moment. So the expectations, as the media describes them now, is issues on how to use and how the expectations that there are on generative AI methods for video. Also, increasingly, there are talks about how can we make money out of these applications, and there is a lot of efforts and a lot of discussions about currently mostly B2B, business to business, but increasingly also business to consumer. One thing, of course, that especially this year in which there are elections in more than 80 countries in the world, the impact of AI in elections is something which is around. Of course, there's starting to be this discussion about the hype itself. Is this a fad or is something which is here to last? How much is hype? How much will go and how much will stay? Also, the relation between AI and other emergent technologies such as quantum computing, gene editing, and so on. And of course, there is also a lot of discussion on the current ongoing regulation efforts. And I believe that just today, finally, all the European countries have agreed and signed for the European AI Act. So we can expect a lot coming from there in the coming months. But of course, regulation is not something which is only in Europe, and many countries are working and many organizations on that. So this is kind of the hype in where we are, and every day, like I say, we will see different discussions and the word AI being mentioned in many different types of news. But what are we doing with AI? What is all this background to the hype? Of course, most of it, or a large part of it, at least as the general public sees it, comes with all the opportunities and possibilities that generative AI models and the large language models have proportioned in the last few months. So what have we all been doing with AI? In a sense, we all have been playing with the opportunities that these systems do. For instance, this is an image that I generated some time ago on the prompt, a Bosch washing machine in the style of Hieronymus Bosch. The result is pretty impressive. It's clearly aligned with the style of the painter Hieronymus Bosch. It includes the Bosch washing machine, which of course was not around when Hieronymus Bosch ever was painting in the 1400 something. It is great, and we all have experienced this type of images or text or so on. Of course, the questions that come at the same time are questions about who owns this, who is the owner, the creator of this image. Is it me? Is it Stable Diffusion? Is it Hieronymus Bosch? Is it the Bosch Corporation, because we are using one of their machines? Who owns, who can be responsible for the images and the text that we are generating? But also, of course, more deeper questions about what does this mean for arts and for creativity? Is this an artistic expression, or is this just some replication? And can we talk about AI as being the tool, like I could have used a pencil or a brush to make the painting? Or do we need to start talking about AI systems as being authors of this type of images or texts? These discussions, as all you know, are going on in many different directions. There is no decision yet, and probably there will be never really a decision on all these type of questions. But we do need to think about what exactly does this mean, and how is this related and enlarging or changing our own capabilities as people. So what is AI doing at the same time? So again, let's see how AI is dealing with all these possibilities of generation. And of course, it's not new that AI is doing and identifying images in very problematic, very hurtful, and very wrong ways. In a sense, and the image that I'm showing there with the tag is, like many of you are probably aware, a couple of years old. It was based on Google's search engine searches. But we are doing the same type of things with generative AI. Asking for a nurse in front of an hospital, it will give us images of females. Surprisingly, even more surprisingly, asking for an image of a doctor in front of an hospital, we get predominantly male, and whereas the nursing profession is indeed predominantly female, the doctor profession is very equal distributed in most Western or in most countries at this moment. So these images are reproducing our prejudices. We all will probably automatically think of a female if someone asks you to think of a nurse. At least in English. In other languages is different. But the point as well is that as we generate this type of images, as we keep tagging things wrongly and hurtfully, with the way that AI is being used nowadays, and with the possibilities of generative AI, all these images that I create are potentially input for a next generation of systems, which will have even more a confirmation that wrongly you can connect nurses to female and doctors to male. So we are also contributing to maintaining the prejudice by the use of the systems that we have. AI is also, and especially these generative systems are also very well known for all the errors that come with the things that are generated. All what is here in red in this very short generated bio of myself are wrong things, including the papers and the journals that it refers to. So I can identify it, but most of the people will not be able to find what is wrong here. Mostly, also, especially because these things are not very different from what you could expect. But again, AI is generating in many cases very wrong information, and it's very important that we all are aware of how to deal and how to be able to judge this type of outputs. Both this type of developments have led to increasing efforts on what is so-called guardrails, making sure that AI systems are not producing wrong information, but also not harmful and hurtful information, blocking in a sense based on some human principles what we can or what the AI system should or should not be producing. And then we get to things like you can ask ChatGPT in this case to tell you a joke about women, and the system will nowadays, because of these guardrails, give you a whole sermon about why is it not right to ask or to tell or to jokes about women. The same if you ask a joke about a fat person, it will say, yes, I'm not able to do that. But seemingly there are no guardrails when you ask jokes about tall people. And then if you try to engage with the system to understand why tall people can be joked about and not fat people, the system gets even more and more confusing. So AI is proportionating us a lot of opportunities, and especially the general public at the moment is able to interact in ways that we never had before and really benefit from these interactions. But at the same time, we need to realize, excuse me, that what AI is generating is in many cases wrong, is prejudiced, is harmful, and is not right or not correct in many cases. Why is this? What is coming behind? So there are many different reasons, it's a complex problem, but let's just look at how AI sees the world. This image comes from the Mozilla Internet Health Report from 2022. It's about healthcare, health and medicine related data sets, but other data sets are not very different. And what we see is that indeed the way AI sees, or the kind of input that we give to AI systems to learn from, to train these systems, this input is extremely skewed. And it is, in a sense, then one of the reasons that the systems are so prejudiced in some cases is also because of the possibilities that are given to the systems to learn about the world. It's not only these data sets are very skewed, but also it's important to realize that 50% of the data sets in this blue part of the world are connected to 12 institutions only. Of these 12 institutions, 10 are in the North America, one is in Europe, and one is in Asia. Excuse me. So the control, the power, the capability to interfere or to lead this development of these systems is even more skewed than the data sets themselves. Also, if you think about how do we conceptualize AI systems, and now I'm going a bit into the more technical aspects, but AI systems are designed, are developed for a large part based on the paradigm that the system is rational, that the system will hold consistent beliefs, and that the system will take actions or will take decisions based on an optimization of the preference and priorities that are given to the system. So it's a very rational way of looking at the world, which leads to the type of actions, this type of optimizations that we see these systems acting on again and again. However, the world itself, the context in which we act and the context in which these systems are increasingly being used are very different and are not necessarily as rational as we expect. Also, we people are perfectly able to deal with incompatible goals, with inconsistent beliefs, and there are many more motivations for action or for decision than just optimization of the priorities or optimization of preferences. Another important issue or aspect to realize is that we as people, as societies, don't tend to maximize forever, and maximization is not the goal. Very often, also given the bounded capabilities that we have, good is good enough, and there is no need for extra maximization or optimization in many cases. So all the issues, so how AI sees the world, what we are doing with AI, how we are designing and developing these systems, are increasingly leading to concerns about what these systems are doing. These concerns can be very concrete and very much affecting communities, like for instance, in this picture, the strike at Hollywood for authors and artists, but also the image at the bottom in Dutch to people in the Netherlands which were affected by the scandal around the child benefit decisions, which were automatized by AI systems and implemented without human intervention, with many, many problems on that. So we see increasingly the problems that come from using systems which are designed and developed along lines and along expectations that are not exactly aligned with what we as a world, we as society, we as humanity take as the most important values and the most leading principles. So the question, but moreover, we need to think about the idea that it's not just about what is AI and what AI is doing, but these are systems that we build. They are systems that are constructed by people and developed by people and organizations. So we need much more to move away from the discussion, what is AI not, what it can do, what it cannot do, to be much more focusing on what are we doing with these systems, and therefore, what do we want AI to be? And there are many options, many choices that need to be made, and that are made every time that AI systems are developed and implemented, and however, are not all the time explicitly discussed, and definitely not often in a participatory way. So what type of decisions do we have? It starts by the decision about what is exactly the system going to be doing. Is it going to act directly in the world, or is it more a type of simulation or emulation which we want to use, for instance, to understand what intelligence is by trying to build this intelligence? So in a sense, a much more academic effort than those systems that have an active intervention in the world. And depending on what are we doing with AI technology, with AI methods and theories, the decisions and the consequence of those decisions are different. We also need to think about the idea of AI systems being human-like. The question is, what is it to be human-like? Is because the system speaks like a person or writes text like a person? Is because the system looks like a person, like in humanoid robots? And then also, why do we want AI systems to look like humans? We know that the way that these systems are intelligent, if we can call it intelligence, is very, very different from the way that we people are intelligent. So the more we focus on the human likeness of these systems, the more we are mixing the different capabilities and opportunities that we can do with these systems. Another option that we have, another choice, is to design these systems as being tools. And often we see that in the discussion around the human likeness of these systems, the conclusion is, yes, it's better not to design systems as looking like humans, but they should be much more tools. They should be being used to enhance human capabilities much more than to replace humans in their own capabilities and opportunities. But even tools come with affordance. Every tool is designed for a specific purpose, and is also designed and afford possibilities to a specific type of, a specific group of people. I'm left-handed. I cannot use a normal scissors like right-handed people can use, because scissors are designed and built and developed to be used with the right hand, and it doesn't work to use it with the left hand. So also the decisions that we take, even thinking that conceptualizing AI as being a tool rather than being human-like is better to conceptualize it as being a tool. But even there, we do need to think about what is this tool meant to do? What is it going to afford? And who is going to be able to use those affordances? And finally, and maybe from a responsible AI perspective, the most important, do we want these systems to be normative or to be descriptive? Do we want the systems to describe the world as we have constructed, in a sense, like in the showing us images of nurses as being prominently female, because that's somehow a description of the current world? Or do we want these systems to be normative and therefore to enforce a principle or a value that we find more important? For instance, the value of equity and equality and gender equal opportunities for all genders, which is not there necessarily in the world, but it's what we would like the world to be, make the world a better system, a better environment through the use of AI systems. If that is the case, if we want AI to be normative, to help us be better, who can determine what is better and how is it going to be better, and is it going to be better for all of us, or who is going to be benefiting more from these norms that we are implementing in the systems? These are all questions that are not technical questions. It's not about the technology behind the technical possibilities of the systems, but are much more questions that need to be addressed from a multidisciplinary way. We need really to address these questions fundamentally in including humanities, social science, and also the technology, and not just leave the implementation to those that at the end of the day are writing down the code for the systems. So AI implies that we are responsible. We see already from the examples and what I've said so far that many things can go wrong. If we assume or expect or take AI as a possibility to use, and we are using it, wanting or not, in many, many different fields, knowing that things are not perfect, that AI comes with problems, then we really need to take the responsibility for all the possible problems that we know that come with it. Problems of bias and discriminations, problems of brittleness, of the capability or the easiness of the system to go completely wrong, given a very, very small perturbation of the inputs, given the way that the system is able to misinterpret things in the world in ways that we would never really see how it can be misinterpreted in those ways. Also, the ways we are building these systems, very much sometimes by trial and error. We put some training data together, we put some algorithms together, we see what comes out of it. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, we kind of try another training data, try another type of algorithm in very much very unstructured and very unjustified types of ways. And at the same time, we also know that by using data that it's collected from the crowd, we are somehow relegating the responsibility for what the AI system is doing, for what the crowd wants, and not always the crowd comes with the necessarily the most relevant types of decisions. So responsible AI, what is it? Why do we care? Firstly, because many of these systems are increasingly acting autonomously. We don't really know that there is an AI system behind many of the decisions that are taken by us and about us. And therefore, the responsibility is even more important in the kinds of autonomously. we also know that the capabilities, the very impressive capabilities of manipulating language that we see, especially in the last year, with all the foundational generative models, large language models, is not necessarily a proxy or a replacement for intelligence. These systems do act in very different ways than what we would do. The decisions and the patterns that the system identifies and bases their actions on are very, very different from what we do. So we do know that. But the idea, the hope, the drive in the field is that these systems will help us or making better decisions or doing better than what we do. And that's one of the great motivations to work here. So those are the kind of the background in which we are using and developing AI systems. And that is exactly the main point. AI systems are designed. AI systems are an artifact. More and more, I see people talking about AI, and especially in the news, very much so. People talking about AI like AI is the weather. AI happens to us, and the only thing we can do is to protect ourselves from the effect of these systems. Taking in that type of narrative, what is happening is that the responsibility is more and more being ignored because the system happens. It just comes from I don't know where. It happens, and we can only look at what are the consequences of the system, and we forget, all of us, some of us because of misinformation, others explicitly make it or is advantage to make it forgetting. We forget that these systems are designed. So the question is, like I said, what do we want these systems to be? And moreover, another question, and what many are calling the question zero of responsible AI, is start with the question, is AI, an AI system, an AI application, an AI development, the most appropriate option that we have in a specific situation? So should we be using AI here? And these questions are increasingly, are often made by those in power, those ones who can decide about it, but we are not questioning enough about who is taking these decisions. What are the values and the considerations that are taken to base this decision on? Often these are economic values, but we all know that economic values are not all possible values. So who should be involved in these discussions? Which values should be considered? How are we going to prioritize these values? And how do we decide collectively on the use or not of AI systems for specific activities and functions and fields? Go the other way around. So why do we care? Why should we care about AI, responsible AI? And now going a bit in the direction of regulation. I often compare the current state of AI to a car that has been designed without brakes and no seat belts, is being driven by someone who doesn't have a driver's license, and is going down a road where there are no traffic rules. None of us would be willingly ever sitting in a car like this. None of us would go into a car which has no brakes, and we expect that people that are interacting in the traffic do have driver's license, have a minimum understanding of what they are doing, have a minimum control over what they are doing, and in order to be able for these cars to interact in the road, we do expect traffic rules. These traffic rules are not necessarily the same all over the world, but we know that there are traffic laws. And why do we expect this? Why do we do that? Like I say, no one would go in a car if we know that the car had no brakes. So cars, in a sense, drive faster because we know that there is a brake. With AI, we don't really know yet what are the brakes that we want to put there, what are the seat belts that we want to put there. But we are aware, in many cases, that the systems don't really have none of these checks and controls and possibilities. And of course, if there are no rules, it's also very difficult to determine how do we interact with each other. So often, like we say, in a game without rules, no one wins. So there is no possibility for a safe and beneficial interaction if there are no rules. So regulation is not something which is against innovation and which is there to create problems to those that want to develop and use AI systems, but is much more a stepping stone for innovation. We need to innovate in technology that does have these brakes, these seat belts, and so on. But we also need to innovate on the specific issues. So what does it mean, a brake in an AI system? How are we going to develop these things? Are we going to develop these rules? How are we going to decide on the driver's license equivalent? All of these are areas open for innovation and are areas in which there is very little done yet. So if anything, by expecting that the regulation comes with the rules for this type of issues, regulation is opening a whole field, a whole space of extra innovation than just ensuring that you developed the next generation of foundational model or the next generation of machine learning algorithms. More, why do we care? What are the consequences of what we are doing? How is AI being developed? Most systems we have nowadays are developed and trained based on huge amount of data and increasingly more and more amounts of data. But this datification is leading in different potentially problematic directions. One is that we start forgetting that reality is not the data that we have about that reality. Reality is more than the data. We also tend to forget that data in itself is a constructed, it's constructed, is not a raw material in the world, is something that it's built by people for specific uses, for specific goals. And therefore, because data, you need to select what in reality we are covering with the data that we collect. By necessity, this data is biased. We are making choices, we are collecting information about the length of or the weight of a person, but we don't collect information about the color of the socks. So we are biased in the possibilities that this data gives us. The issue of power I already referred to, the possibilities and those that are developing AI at this moment, those that are deciding about AI, are a very small and very misinformative, misaligned group with the world in itself, not only in terms of gender or of demographics, but also because the more and more the power and the capability to develop these huge systems that we are using nowadays are in the hands of very few corporations, very few, most of them private corporations, and corporations that have their own values and that follow their own objectives. Finally, another issue that is also related to the responsibility in AI is this issue of sustainability. And we hear more and more about the computational costs of AI, how much it costs to train an algorithm, how much it costs to develop a next generation of ChatGPT, for instance, how much it costs to ask ChatGPT to generate some figure or some text for you. And that's equivalent to, I believe, a light bulb. Each question is like a light bulb for a couple of minutes or something like that. So it's much more than what you expect. So, but not just this type of energy and computational costs, but increasingly we also need to look at the human and social costs of what we are doing, not only by the effects of how these systems are trained and developed and the data that necessarily is biasing or is biased and not providing equal capabilities and equal opportunities for all, but also for those that are involved, that are behind the systems that are being developed, those that collect the data, those that tag the data, those that maintain and do check the results of the systems, and many more that are involved in a very hidden way and very forgotten way. Just to finish my slide, so AI, responsible AI is not about technology. It's not making AI systems responsible. It's also realizing that AI doesn't exist in a vacuum, that AI systems by themselves are not able to go nowhere, but the AI systems are always part of a social technical ecosystem, complex system infrastructure, including those that develop, those that maintain, those that deploy, those that govern, those that use, and all of us in this very complex ecosystem, all of us have a part to play in the responsible use and development of these systems. So responsible AI approaches are much more a social issue than a technical issue. And for that, we also need to take it out of the idea that we can solve responsibilities, solve all the problems of AI by technology alone, by building better technology. There is no technology fix for all the problems that we encounter. And we do need to include in the solution all this multidisciplinary approach, including the ethics, the regulation, the governance, which have to address not the technology, but the ecosystem in which the technology is being used. Now, a very short overview of what is being developed. So there are, like you all know, many principles and regulations going on. The most recent is this interim report by the United Nations, of which I'm one of the members of the group. There are many. The issues with this. First, is good to realize that most of them are quite aligned in terms of what kind of principles they propose: transparency, fairness, accountability, human rights, beneficial, and so on. Great. No one can disagree with that. The point is that when it gets to interpretation, what do we mean by all these things, and how can we move from this very high level type of values to concrete approaches and solutions technically and organizationally? Those are the issues that need to be further developed. There is also a lot of discussions about what is why should we regulate, what should we regulate, what for is this regulation. I'm not going in these details. It's just good to remember that cars drive faster with brakes, and if we don't have rules, there will be no capability for us to benefit. So regulation is not a question, is more an issue of how are we going to do it, not whether we should do it, but how are we going to do it. The AI Act, like I just referred at the beginning, is one of the most advanced approaches to, this is the European AI Act that I'm talking about, one of the most developed approaches towards a concrete implementation of AI regulation. It's good to realize that this AI Act is meant as a regulation that benefits consumer protection, and in itself is only one of the very many different laws and proposals of laws that the European Union is developing around the whole field of AI and digital economy. So it's much more, it doesn't cover everything, and is very focused on consumer protection. So all the recommendations and the rules that come there are motivated by the idea that citizens of Europe and citizens of the world need to be protected. The United Nations advisory body that I just follow, but just to finish, it's important to realize that it is not an issue of technology alone, like I just hope to sufficiently have explained, but it's also not an issue of just talking about the ethics. Responsible AI is not about sitting forever and philosophizing about what ethics are there, what ethics are not there. It is also not about aiming at developing an implementation that solves the ethical problems. It is mostly and fundamentally about the choices, the priorities, and the trade-offs that need to be done, and about guiding us in understanding how to talk about these trade-offs, about this choice, and then moving from talking and agreeing on these choices and trade-offs, how are we going to move this forward to implement it? So responsible AI is very much about innovation. We need technological innovation, but we also need organizational innovation, governance, social innovation, and in a sense, we need multidisciplinary innovation. We need to be able to develop technology that provably and formally is able to be verified for all types of principles that we would like them to implement. It's easy to say that we want a system to be fair. It is very, very difficult to prove that the system that has been developed is indeed fair, and fair in which interpretation of it. So we do need much more innovation in this direction. We also need innovation to deal with and address all the fundamental challenges, societal challenges that are coming through the developments and capabilities of AI, from politics to education to computer science itself to the creative industries. All this there are many societal challenges that need to be addressed. And again, to address these challenges, technology in itself is not sufficient, or is probably not even the best way to go. We do need much more multidisciplinary innovation. The same in terms of governance. It's good to think that we need laws and we need agencies and so on, but we really need much more work in terms of scientific and theoretically and formally grounded approach to governance, to policy, to the development of these systems. And again, here we do need a lot of innovation, but also we need political will to go in these directions. We need countries and organizations to really want and dare to take the steps towards governance of AI systems. And finally, I hope, and I think that I have made it clear to you, that AI is not a technology, at least AI as we talk about it in nowadays, and it is a social construct. It affects us, it is affected by us, and the development and use of AI require much more than technical mathematical solutions, but really requires a multidisciplinary approach to understand also the impact of these systems in the world and how the consequences of these systems for our democracies, for our societies, and for human rights. It is not a choice. It's something, there is no AI without responsible AI. Thank you very much. And now I think we have time for the questions.
Thank you, Virginia. Amazing set of questions, many questions.
Yeah. I have more questions than what you can generate in the question time, I think.
Yes, and also we need to work on many answers. We have plenty of questions. I don't think we will be able to answer all the questions, but be sure that we will do a blog posting with the rest of the questions, so no question will go unanswered. Okay. So please start the Q&A.
All right. Thank you, Virginia. Thank you, Ricardo. The first question is, how can we decide what we want AI to be before or while we are doing it if human curiosity and desire to know for the sake of knowing drives us to develop AI without thinking twice?
Very good question. And I think it's a bigger question than what I can answer now. But the point is not so much that we need to decide once and for all, or we have to decide before we build the systems, but we do need to keep this question needs to be continuously in our minds. Of course, we do need to explore, and we want to be driven by curiosity and see what is possible there. That is how science and technology evolves. But we need to keep that curiosity going, definitely. But at the same time, we have all the time to be asking ourselves, what do we want? What are the consequences? What are the possible uses, the possible effects, the possible impact of the directions that we are taking? So we do need not to answer the question directly, or definitely not to expect that we can first answer the question and then do the work. We need to do it in parallel, but we cannot forget to ask ourselves this question continuously.
Thank you. Could you speak a bit more on what the role of government regulation is in making AI responsible?
I think there are many roles. So the regulation, firstly, or governance is not just about generating legislation or laws for AI. Governance is a multifaceted field in which hard regulation by governments takes place and is necessary, but also we need to take regulation or governance in the way that the development processes, the design life cycle methods that we use, the engagement and the principles and the vision of the organizations involved. So we need to, each of us, think about what are the driving principles for what we want to do at individual level, at developer level, at user level, at governing level, at company level, and then governance by countries ensures, so let's say, the legal aspects of it will ensure, firstly, a level playing field. So there is a background or a bottom in which we all know what is the minimum requirements and minimum demands for the systems that are being developed, that will ensure that public and consumers and users can have a minimum expectations about what is being done. But at the same time, it's not necessarily the only, and it's definitely not sufficient to develop and to move the field forward. It guarantees the minimum requirements for safe and appropriate use and development of these systems.
Okay, thank you. Next question. I like your comment that we don't always maximize or optimize a reward, but is it fair to say the optimization or maximizing a reward paradigm is not even relevant in learning lots of knowledge or facts? For example, that water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. I mean, did we go too far by assuming learning is exclusively optimization, maximizing reward? That's a long question. I hope
it is a long question. Yes, I can see it in my screen as well. It's I don't think that we are too far on the using optimization as the only criteria for accuracy or for relevance or for evaluation of the algorithms and the methods that we are developing. Optimization and the accuracy, optimizing the accuracy of the algorithm is important. Of course, we shouldn't do without it, but we need to think much more about what else do we want to look at. One example I give often is, imagine that you develop an algorithm which is 80% accurate. Great. And now we improved this algorithm with 1%. And for that, we took 50% more computational costs. It's not too crazy. Maybe my numbers are a bit exaggerated, but it's not too crazy. We see this in conferences, AI conferences all over the world, in which the criteria for acceptance of the paper is that the paper can prove and can compare the increase of accuracy, the level of optimization, compare it with existing other work. We are not asking ourselves enough about, is this optimization worth the effort or worth the type of technology, the type of data that is used for the issues that we are optimizing. If this algorithm that I developed, which now is 1% more accurate, is to give you a recommendation of the Netflix movie to watch tonight, probably no one would think that it would be good to use 50% more computational costs to develop that. If this algorithm is to optimize the microscopic robots that are going to help in surgeries, maybe those 50% of extra costs are justifiable. But we are not asking ourselves these questions. We are focusing too much on the the mathematical properties of the optimization without asking enough about what else is there that needs to be checked as well.
How can we improve the data sets that provide the underlying information for AI output? And how do we stop incorrect answers or information from further skewing the AI output?
Oh, that's again one question which is a very important one and very complex. I believe, and maybe with that I can show my training in the good old-fashioned AI. I believe that data-driven alone is not the answer and the direction to go. Just adding more data and more increasingly large amounts of data have been proven already that not necessarily always improves on the capability and the properties of the algorithm. So more data doesn't really guarantee you more results. Definitely, if the data that you create more is this data generated by the AI systems themselves, which replicate again and again the bias that are there before, we do need to be much more searching, and for this I think is really a fundamental scientific question that we need to address, and we are not doing that sufficiently. It's very easy to follow the trend of increasing data amounts and increasingly large data sets, but we do need to explore much more other possibilities. We need to look at issues of causality, because the systems that we are developing nowadays are mostly based on correlation, and correlations only work when you have a very large body of evidence that the correlation is there. So therefore, we need all these data sets. But causality needs much less data. There are other approaches, abstraction, which is something which we people seem to be able to do very well, is something which also requires much less data than what we can use with AI. Issues of what would be called case-based reasoning or comparison, quick comparison between abstract classes of entities, are all techniques that have been studied for many years in AI. They don't really give the very, not always the most efficient type of results, but going on and on with the data-driven direction, I don't think that we will get to a better approach. So we do need to look much more at alternatives to data-based approaches, and also to how to combine all the capabilities of these different alternatives in a way that benefits the result more than just getting more data.
How will the EU leadership influence the development of guidelines globally and in the US?
I don't know. I mean, there is this thing which they call the Brussels effect, that once the EU demands a specific type of regulation, and that is not only in AI or in technology, it has been done and been shown in many different fields. Once the European Union comes with regulations, somehow those regulations are transferred and ripple through across the world. So the example, one of the ways to do it is by example, so by showing how we do it in Europe and demanding that products and services developed and used in Europe need to follow those regulations. In a sense, it is giving the order also for the organizations and companies in North America that they need to follow those orders once they want to sell their products and services in Europe. So that's one of the ways that has been proven that the EU leads by example in this. But I think that also the question about regulation is not one which only the EU is thinking about. China has only very recently also come up with very concrete steps for regulation. in the Chinese way. We can agree or not agree with the way they do it, but they are working definitely on regulating the use and the development of AI. But also here in the United States, just last September, I believe, President Biden has come with guidelines or recommendations and directives in terms of how AI can be used in federal services. And that, of course, it will influence also a lot of the way that AI is used outside of federal or government agencies.
There are people contending that the European IA Act, I'm assuming that that is AI.
Yeah. AI Act, yeah.
AI Act misses the point trying to regulate and classify risks instead of usages. Knives can be dangerous, but the technology of knives is not the thing to be regulated. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, I think that it's not so much the issue of risks, but indeed trying to regulate technology or the fundamentals of that technology, I don't think is what is necessarily the best direction to go. One of the things that we saw in the AI Act, for those that have followed it, is that recently they introduced some specific characteristics or specific directives for what they call general purpose AI or foundational models or generative AI type of models, explicitly referring to that in the law. My own private opinion is that this, in a sense, is weakening the law. It would be the same as the law about demanding that cars have brakes, which says we are going to include in this law. We say that it's about cars that have a diesel motor, is about cars that have a gasoline motor, is about cars that have electric motor, and if we do it like that, then we are all the time dependent and running behind what the technology and the innovation can do. If next year another type of motors come for cars, we would need to change the law about the brakes to include this new type of cars. It feels a little bit like that, the way that the last version of the AI Act is designed, very much trying to include all types of technology explicitly. Whereas what I think it would make much more sense is saying, these are the issues that we really want to address. These are the uses and the applications that we want to address. We, as regulator, couldn't care less about your technology, but you have to, whatever technology you use, you have to make sure that you include the brakes in your car. I don't care if your car has an electrical motor or a diesel motor. I do care, and I will check and I will demand from you that you put the brakes in the car. If you understand my example. So I think that in a sense, the question is right. And I hope and I expect that once the AI Act comes into action, that there will be adjustments which will hopefully work more in that direction.
All right, I will pass it to Ricardo. Thank you so much, Virginia.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Virginia. We have 20 more questions that we'll not be able to answer, but we will work with you if you can to do a blog posting to answer
Sure. Yep.
these questions. There are different topics like education. Also, what about who is the owner of the generated images and so on. But I would like to continue with the last question because also I'm interested. So I also disagree that we need to regulate technology. We need to regulate the use of technology. We need to regulate the problems. And in this case, it's harder because the technology applies to everything.
Yeah,
but
yeah, exactly.
But if we take this issue aside, do you see other issues with the European Union AI Act, or you say that's the only issue that you see that will create a problem in the future to enforce it, and also will be enforced in at least 2 more years?
There are a couple more issues. There are several issues which potentially are problematic with AI Act. This is, I think, a big one. Another one is something which is worrying me a bit, is that initially the idea was that there would be developed an independent agency that would be checking and observing the implementation of the AI Act, a bit like the European Medicine Agency, or here in the United States, the Drugs and Food, I don't know how you call it, agency. And now that seems to be becoming a department within the European Commission. So then it becomes a bit too close to the developer, the enforcer, and the agency. That I'm a bit afraid of the independence of this agency, but we'll need to see exactly how that will be implemented. But I think another one which is important to talk about is the concretization of what the AI Act is demanding. It is still, I feel, very much abstract in terms of what exactly are the steps that organizations need to do in order to, for instance, be able to determine whether their own products are high risk or middle risk or low risks. I think that will potentially pose a big burden on the organizations, especially the small and medium organizations in Europe, because they have to come with the criteria and the justification of what is their product about. Is it high risk or low risk?
Thank you, Virginia. Sadly, we don't have more time for questions. I think we could talk very long.
I'm happy to be approached by email if people want to ask me some more questions. But like you say, maybe it's good to do together a blog addressing all these issues together.
So thank you again for a great talk. And let me remind all the people that our next talk is in 2 weeks. It's about AI ethics. Our own Jansu Janja that will talk about how we need to reshape the role of IRBs for AI research, because we have seen many papers that have ethical issues and they have been published anyway. And also we'd like to remind you that you can subscribe to our newsletter. And I will finish here. So thank you, Virginia, again. And
thank you very much.
See you in person soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you all, and have a nice day or afternoon.